Hello and welcome to my self-learned English. My name is Wilfredo Walter Maget Gonzalez, pronounced as is in Spanish language. Two names, Wilfredo Walter, and two surnames. The first one, Maget from my dad. The second one, Gonzalez from my mom. In Cuba, the first surname is the father's first one, and the second surname is the mother's first one. In my case, everyone calls me Walter. Pronounce it as you want. And there are many ways like Walter, 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 Volter, Walter. But in chess, my sport, I am known by Mayet, my first surname. Native Cuban with Spanish language as mother tongue language, I was born in Havana, Cuba on April the 12th, 1960. So it's easy to count how old I am at the time of listening to me. My dad was a Cuban professional boxer in the decade of 1940s, renowned by his both hands knockout punch. But he didn't look he was boxer, but his face and the way he spoke. When I was a 4-year-old restless child in 1964, he ordered my sister to teach me reading and writing. Personally taught me how to search words in a dictionary, actions which put my family in peace because I became a zealous reader till today. At the age of 9, in 1967, I stood up as the teacher in a classroom for the first time. I was assistant teacher till the end of the pre-university school in 1978. At the age of 10, the day by the end of 1970, my dad brought home a chessboard and chess pieces. He taught me the basics learned about week before for about an hour or so, and leaving me a little textbook on chess. As he said, "Go on learning ahead by yourself." In the period from 1973 to 1978, I was one of the leading chess players in school and junior categories in Havana and Cuba. Daddy encouraged me to become an engineer and grandmaster, but at the early times, chess was not in my plans for the professional life. Cuba belonged to the former socialist community led by the former Soviet Union, and Russian language was so fashionable in Cuba that it was taught over the radio. When I was 16, in 1976, influenced by the examples of some relatives older than me, my cousin, then a young lady who became a translator of pure Bulgarian language and was in Bulgaria, and my cousin, then a young man who was in the Soviet Union and became a technician there, I decided learning any foreign language very well, only achievable, I thought, by studying abroad in the languages environment. 2 years later, in 1978, I was one of the best students of Havana, with better results in humanities. However, I applied to engineering studies in the Soviet Union, but got a career in machines and curing installations to the former People's Republic of Poland. Then I knew a few about Poland. That is, was a Central European country belonging to the Socialist Council for Mutual Economic Assistance, knew nothing about its language, less that Polish language is one of the 10 most difficult languages of the world. In August 1978, I played the last chess competition in the Cuban Junior Championship in the eastern cities of Guantanamo and Baracoa, where I kept the fifth place in the Cuban Junior ranking 1 year earlier. After a month, I came to Havana almost straight from the tournament and the bus station to a 10-month preparatory course in 4 subjects: Polish and knowledge on Poland, mathematics, physics, and chemistry, all taught in Polish language. 42 students started. Only 9 boys and the only one girl in the course got finished to pass the course. In August 1979, I landed with 4 of my colleagues at the Okęcie airport in Warsaw. The first contact in Polish I made with the taxi driver to drive us to the Cuban embassy. Just in place, my career was changed to machines and shipbuilding at the Stettin's Technological College. After the declaration of martial law in December the 13th, 1981, the Cuban government withdrew students at the beginning of 1982. I was in my second year of studies and in Poland for 2.5 years. The story of my return was not simple. Basically, the Cuban government's order was the relocation of the students to the Soviet Union. However, many of us, including me, did not want to go there but returned to Cuba instead, and the government took our refusal as counter-revolutionary behavior under the influence of Poles' views. What about influence of Poles? Getting knowledgeable of a different history of Poland. For example, in a Cuban school, we were taught that the Second World War began on June the 22nd, 1942, when the Germans invaded the Soviet Union. A month after my arrival, I got shocked that this attack came from occupied Poland by Germany since September the 1st, 1939, to occupied Poland by the Soviet Union since September the 17th, 1939. In my personal case, the government of Cuba banned me from studying in Cuba, which means that it closed the entrance to all Cuban universities forever. Nevertheless, the same government of Cuba did not take into account that in 1977 Poland was not in my sight when I refused getting into Cuban Young Communist Organization, and that in Poland some Pole's soul resurrected in me to drag me into a hard, relentless fight. Initially, with such counter-revolutionary inscriptions around Poland, many people turned their backs and it was difficult to find any job in a country where it was impossible to work privately. In Poland, I had a subject on welding and I was refused to be a welder's assistant. Only after 6 months of return, in August 1982, I started working as data processor assistant in the accounting department, but after some time, I was offered to work as a workshop assistant under the pretext of reducing the crew. I accepted, but hence, after 2 weeks, I was sent out to the street. There are too many employees in the enterprise. Then, in all of these actions, I saw the long arms of the Cuban government and said to myself, in the future, I won't be expelled again by anyone. And I never wasn't laid off again till today. I was unemployed again from mid-December 1982 to mid-March 1983, when I started working in the computing world as accounting data entry operator. Years later, I remember those times and some subtle facts. It seemed to me that the Cuban government started playing to push me to emigrate because the Pole doesn't give up. And I just knew that I was inconvenient to him. But then immigration was associated with building a raft and escaping across the Florida Strait, and Cuban government didn't know I was terribly afraid of being food for sharks. In June or July 1983, the Cuban government issued a notification to me. Please report to the Ministry of Higher Education. They know what to proceed with you. And there I was handed a form with blank lines and had been told, please state the career you want. And in September 1983, at the University of Havana, I began the 6-year night studies of Licenciatura en Cibernética Matemática, Software Engineering, Computer Science, to the profession of software engineer or programmer developer. After a year and a half of hard bitter struggle, the Cuban government had to eat its sentence counter-revolutionary behavior under the influence of Paul's views, letter by letter, and must swallow each one without water. After a year or two, I regret, and still regret, that then I did not state a second additional career, law, which I could easily finish at the same time. In December 1984, after proving that I can program computers using the Algol 60 language similar to Pascal, from the last 6 months of first years of studies, I won the only one computer programmer position posted out of several applicants, but I had no official certification of the profession. In Cuban conditions, the employer would not be able to hire me, but my future bosses, two experienced engineers, wanted it cybernetic, and there would have to be some consensus between them and the recruiting staff. Later, it was revealed that I was working very smoothly and efficiently, including in the positions of operator. However, for the next 4.5 years, until 1989, I was doing my work without publicity about my lack of technical paper. One day of 1986, one of the lecturers advised publicly that in-depth and better IT information is available in the university's library in English. I took the advice and started self-taught learning English, which knowledge I certified passing test at the beginning of 1989 and the second time in 1991. In July 1989, I defended my soulmate thesis, one day the software, some days later the theory, of innovative computer work from my workplace where I was already a technologist and advisor with no technical paper. Therefore, in 1989, I have got my first technical certification as software engineer, plus a certification of my CV from a Poland's college in my graduate folder, plus distinction for direct continuation to get PhD degree. In addition, the mentioned certification of second foreign language, English, all at once. In 1991, I was honored with one of the highest Cuban national awards for my innovative achievements in the period since 1986 to 1990. Months later, I got the scientific level so-called minimum candidate to PhD after completing its CV in the Department of Applied Statistics of the Mathematical Cybernetics of the University of Havana. But in between, I have got a new better job and better paid position as a specialist in Cuba, generally awarded after about 8 years of engineering experience, all at once again. On the other side, I recovered 6 years of losing of being a professional due to the government's withdrawal from Poland in 1982, and even more, I was on the way to becoming a PhD, a doctor. Nevertheless, at this point, I decided to put an end to PhD highway. For several reasons, put on the scale, the two most important were: first, after so many years, counted from childhood, I was fed up with the obligatory daytime and evening learnings and researches. Second, the collapse of the European socialist community and the dissolution of the Soviet Union triggered the beginning of the economic crisis in Cuba, forcing me to look for additional resources to support my family. I never regret the taken decision. In 1991, it also turned out that at 31 years of age, I was suddenly at the peak of my professional career. But by the years, it also turned out that the above discussed results and scientific achievements were useful, some of them until the end of the 20th century, and at least one of them until 2011, totalizing 26 years of usefulness since 1986. I thank to my parents, to Poland, my other homeland, to initial Poles, women and men who were close to me, and my inner, restless, struggling Poles souls for whom I became, with my own virtues and imperfections as human being. Thank you very much for listening to this recording.